Okay, today we are excited to have Taisha Martelli here, and she's going to be talking about child welfare and early intervention, which is a very broad topic, but she brings a lot of expertise to our conversation today. So, Taisha, we're excited to have you here this morning with us.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll get into her expertise in just a minute. Quick introductions. You all know me by now. I'm Megan Mitchell. Some of the work that I do, we were just talking before we hopped on, we do a lot of different things as social workers. I currently am in private practice and I work with children and teens. I do obviously my work for Agents of Change. We're growing our continuing education platform, which we're really excited about. And then also I'm in a doctoral program, which will finish up in May 2025. And maybe I will have some of my free time back after that. But I'm doing a lot of different things. And my areas of clinical interest are around neurodivergent kiddos, intersection of technology and social work, and then also supervision. So how do we incorporate diversity and multicultural issues into supervision? So that's a little bit about me and a little bit about Taisha. She's done a lot of different things. We were just chatting before we hopped on. She has her master's from Barry University and her bachelor's from LaSalle, and she will talk a little bit more about this, but she has many different hats that she wears. She does early intervention work for Brighter Days in Philadelphia. She also does dialysis social work, and then she also does some couples counseling as well. So she has a very diverse skill set that she's going to talk about today. And then she also has done case management, community case management, child welfare aftercare, I'm sure a lot of wraparound services, and we'll get into that today to talk about her expertise. Like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about early intervention in child welfare and just broadly talking about some of these different topics, but what are our learning objectives for today? Participants will be able to analyze multidisciplinary collaboration. We're going to talk about in her work who Taisha intersects with on a daily basis. We know that we don't work in a vacuum. We are constantly working with parents, other service providers, a variety of different people. We're going to talk about early intervention and the impact. I love that we are talking about early intervention because I think it's some of the most important work we can do. You get the most bang for your buck, and just prevention work is so important. And then we'll briefly touch on advocacy and policy, like what are some areas that social workers need to be aware of policy-wise, and what are some areas we could improve on as we're working with clients and systems. Why is this important? Early intervention is so important. So if you are someone that does not work with this population, we're going to talk about how working and intervening at the early stages, how that can have really long-term effects for clients and their families, how we can provide holistic wraparound care. Collaboration is key, especially with child welfare and early intervention. And then what are some of the systematic barriers or some of the policies that we need to be aware of and work around? So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Taisha again. And Taisha, thank you for being here today, but just kind of start off and tell us a little bit about your experience with child welfare and how that ties into your work that you do with early intervention.
Hi, Megan. Thank you for having me. And thank you for such a marvelous introduction. So my experience with child welfare and how it led into early intervention.
Yeah, or how it intersects, I'm sure both.
So my introduction into child welfare, I would have to say that was child welfare was embedded in me during undergrad. All of my professors, that's all they talked about is how they started their social work careers in child welfare. And I have to say that my professors from LaSalle University were just some of the most magnificent women that I have encountered. You know, I wanted to be a social worker, but upon meeting these women, it pushed me more to want to be a social worker. And hearing that, you know, they all got their start in child welfare basically turned on a light switch in me and made me say, okay, then this is where I need to start. If I want to become like these women that I'm idolizing, then I need to start my foundation in child welfare. And that's what I did upon graduating from undergrad. I started in child welfare, and I have to say it was quite the experience. Granted, from the stories that my professors had told me and the things that I was seeing in my own personal professional experience, it was definitely different because different times, so things were a lot different, but it was what I needed to begin to shape and mold the social worker that I've become. So definitely want to put that out there for all new social workers. I definitely would say start your career in child welfare. It's definitely a learning experience. Even if it's not for you, it's a great start. It's phenomenal. I think that's what you need as a new and upcoming social worker. So starting out in child welfare, seeing what I did in child welfare and what I'm doing now in early intervention, it definitely is intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, being a liaison for the families, advocacy, providing resources, and just pretty much linking the families to the resources that they need, providing them with information that they didn't know was readily available to them, and just being that in-home support that they need. Because, depending on the circumstances, a lot of people are limited to what it is they can do for themselves, whether it's making, a phone call to multiple avenues to get appointments for things that they need, or not knowing about a certain benefit that they may qualify for and bringing them, the application and working with them to just basically get all the help and get access to the help that they need to survive, pretty much.
And I just want to ask you, from your perspective, I think a lot of people hear child welfare and there's a negative connotation. Oh my goodness, there's this terrible negative connotation. What is something that, like, from being on the inside, being a worker, what would you debunk, or what are some things that people probably don't know when you're actually doing the work? Because you hear that and people automatically think CPS taking kids away, and that's just not what happens as a child welfare social worker.
You absolutely took the words out of my mouth. A lot of friends of my mother, believe it or not, when they found out that I was in school to be a social worker, it was definitely like everyone looked at me like, oh, so you want to take people's kids away? And I'm like, that's not what we do. No, I said, I'm becoming a social worker because I want to help people. I want to work with children and families because I feel like they are the most vulnerable.
Yes.
There are so many resources out there going to waste because people don't know that A, they qualify for them, or B, how to go about obtaining them. I said, I want to be that resource. I want to be that link. I want to be that liaison. It took a while for me, I mean, not that I had to prove anything to anyone, but it took a while for me to kind of have to prove to people, like, this is what child welfare is about. This is what social work is about. This is what I actually do. 9 times out of 10, first of all, me personally, I've never removed a child from anyone's home.
Yeah.
I, if anything, try to get children back in their homes. So, just the child welfare it's not bad. It's definitely something that is needed, but people don't see that. People have this negative connotation of, oh, a child welfare social worker, oh, you break up families, you ruin lives. No, I'm here to make sure that the family stays together. I'm here to make sure that the family has everything put in place so that they're not separated. Yeah. So that, I'm here to keep families together. I'm not in the business of breaking them apart.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what are some of the main things you might be helping a family with when you do in-home services and child welfare?
It all depends. I can assist in obtaining basic necessities, diapers, wipes, clothes, giving them food bank information. If they're unaware of WIC programs, I can take them down to the WIC office, have them apply for WIC. If they don't have SNAP or Medicaid, I typically go over with, like a application. I help them fill out the application for themselves and the children in the home, help them get it processed so that they can, receive these benefits. Again, a lot of people don't think that they qualify for them.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't take it upon themselves to complete the applications. And I always tell my clients, regardless, I said, the worst they can say is no.
Is no.
And if they say no, then we'll figure something else out. We'll go to a food bank.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a will, there's a way. One thing about me is I'm extremely persistent when it comes to helping my clients. I don't accept no for an answer, especially if it's a family that I see is in dire need of some assistance. I'm going to jump through hoops to get you what you need.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you're a fierce advocate for your clients, which is
I
what the clients need. Do you find that some families, this is just, I have not been in child welfare, but I've been in schools and a lot of times interfacing with
Mhm.
maybe the family social worker. Do you find that sometimes the families just feel very defeated because the systems are not set up to support them? I've had many families like, I've tried, they keep denying me for benefits. And then at some point they just feel like no one's on my side. So you might have to be that advocate for someone to say, you know what, this is a really challenging system to navigate, but I'm here to help you through it.
I have. I have. And I have families from, different walks of life. A lot of people, when they think of child welfare, they think of like single mom or
Yeah.
like a domestic violence situation or drugs and alcoholism. And that's not always the case. It You might just be down on your luck. It
Yeah.
it does not have there doesn't have to be something major going on, and that's one thing that I like to bring to like out there, like when I'm talking about child welfare, like these are not, low class, people. These are not like I've had some pretty well off clients, like and that's one thing, like people think of child welfare, oh, they're homeless, they don't have any money, they don't have any no, that's not always the case. But when I do have the clients who are like, oh, I applied for this and I didn't get approved, or I did that and that didn't, okay, we're doing the application again. Oh, I don't want to do it again, I'm gonna get denied, they're not gonna approve me. Let's see what went wrong.
Yeah.
Let's do it together. And sometimes it's a matter of a simple mistake. They
Yeah.
accidentally checked the wrong box. And it took was a second pair of eyes to look over the application. And
Mm.
then, we'll do the application together, or what you have it, I send it off, and then 2 to 3 days later, I'm getting a call. Oh my God, I got approved for, emergency food stamps, or my WIC application came through. Oh my gosh, it, it's you just have to take your time, and it's all about, just having that person trust you enough
Mm.
to be able to help them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have met with a lot of clients who, the social worker before me was not as empathetic, was not as patient, was not as caring. And here I come walking through the door with a stack of applications in my hand, and they're like, well, what's going to make you any different?
Yep.
What's going to make you any different? And not to toot my own horn, but I let them know I get my clients results. Even if it's not the result you're looking for, I'm going to get you what you need
Mm-hmm.
one way or another.
Yeah. And that kind of speaks to the rapport building. It's no matter what, you and I have both worked in a lot of different settings. If you don't have the rapport and the trust, you're not going to get anywhere with clients.
Absolutely not.
So I
Absolutely.
think I always say we are the most important tool. And I don't say that to like you said, toot our own horn, but the therapy, when I say we, I mean the therapeutic relationship is
Right.
the most important tool that we can offer. A couple other follow-up questions. Um, so you work obviously child welfare. Child
Mhm.
is in the name of the work that you do. What was it like having to navigate the complexities of you're not only a family is the unit, right? It's not just the child you might be working with, but what was that like having maybe a family unit where there's multiple players that you have to advocate for versus maybe individual therapy with a client? You're more focusing on a system, the family unit.
So it all depends. Of course, each family is different. Each family dynamic is different. Um, I've had, cases where, it's a two-parent, two-child home, but only one child is a quote unquote case child.
Okay.
Um, and how, they would want for you to go about things is, your focus is that child, your case child.
Okay.
But me and just how I'm just built different. I'm not going to go in the house and just, pat the other kid on the head and just say, hey, I'm here for Tommy. No, I'm going to pay attention to both. If I see that the other sibling is lacking in something or something is missing or they might need something, then I'm definitely going to bring it up to the attention of my superior. And because there have been times where, for example, like backpack drives,
Yep.
we would provide backpacks and school supplies to our case children. And I have had supervisors who will say, okay, you're going to this family home, here's a backpack for the child. And I'll say, yeah, but there's three school age kids in that house. Okay, well, only the youngest one is our case child. And I said, yeah, I'm not gonna go with one backpack and
Yep.
there's three. And then of course, I then have issues with my supervisor who's looking at me, kind of sideways, like, take this to your case child. And I said, my case child has two siblings who also are in need of backpacks. So you're either going to give me three backpacks to take to this house, or I'm not taking any.
Yep.
Because it's one thing to already have a stranger in your house, in your space on a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly basis, and then to have them come bearing gifts for one child.
Yep.
And the parents are struggling, or what you have it to already make ends meet, where me bringing three backpacks full of school supplies could definitely alleviate some stress on the family unit. So I, strong believer in what's right is right. If I could, yes, I have my one case child who was my case child for whatever reason, but if there are other children in the home that I can assist, whether it's minimal, and I'm gonna assist everyone.
And at the end of the day, the child doesn't live in isolation. The child lives in a family unit. So doing that act of service, right? Bringing three backpacks, that's going to go a long way. And
It
actually
is.
probably will do more support than if you brought the one backpack and what the fallout of that, what that might be.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about multidisciplinary work. Who are some, I, as a school social worker, have worked with child welfare, case managers and at-home therapists. As a child welfare worker, who are some, every family's going to be different. Every family has different needs, but who are some people that you had to deal with that were outside of, your team as a child welfare clinician?
So even when, even as a child welfare clinician, you have your own team within that office. You have the case manager, you have the supervisor, you have the outcome specialist, you have the out care worker, you have the there's something else, but I'm drawing a blank on it. And then even with that team right there, you can still pull in early intervention workers, depending on how complex the issue of the child is.
Yeah.
So I'm also dealing with outside case managers. I'm dealing with child advocates if it's a court case, speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, social workers on the outside, child therapists. So it's a lot of hands in the pot, which is why email is essential, because
Mhm.
therefore everybody is included, everybody's involved, everybody knows who everyone is. If we have any communication that needs to be done about child A, please keep it here, because then I could always go back, reference, keep a paper trail, and then also do my notes how I have to do them within the system. So therefore, no one can say that they're left out. And if anyone needs to be added to the party, we can definitely just add their email and keep it going.
So that leads to a really good point. How important, I think you just kind of touched on it, is communication when working in a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary team? It seems essential, but when there's so many hands in the pot, I would think documentation, documentation, documentation.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, as a social worker, the rule of thumb is if you didn't document it, it didn't happen.
Mhm.
If you didn't document it, it didn't happen. And I've come to learn it's better to over document than, of
Yeah.
course, than to document at all. Um, and as I'm getting older, and since I'm slowly creeping up on 10 years in the social work field, um, it's listen, document everywhere you can. If you're writing notes, document and date it. Definitely document in whatever system the that your company requires, and email to back it up,
Yep.
because things happen. Who knows? Your email might crash. Oh, lost all your emails, but then you have the documentation you did in your system. This conversation happened such and such date with so and so. This is what happened. And you could also, as a social worker, I have multiple notepads. This happened on such and such date, wrote it. It coincides with the documentation that's in the system.
Yeah. I cannot stress that enough is the important and not thinking that anything is not worth documenting. For example, I was on a call today with a school team. That's going to go into the case note that I school team at this date. You don't have to be super complex, but any communication or anyone that was involved needs to be there. This leads me to the next point. Your work could be subpoenaed at any time. Did you ever have to go to court? I have, even as a school social worker, had to go to court just to say, hey, this is what I saw in the school setting, and guess what? My notes were subpoenaed.
So as a child welfare worker, you're always in court. You're always in court. But believe it or not, my role, um, when every time I've gone to court, believe it or not, has been just as support
Mhm.
um for the person that I was working for. Like the case, I don't know if you want me to give a brief background or not, but I could. So but
Yeah,
yeah,
give us an example of like when, as a child welfare worker, what going to court might look like.
so I had a particular case that, well they're both brief, I'm sorry. So the one, it was a domestic violence situation, and they were of a different culture, they were of a particular cultural background, and mom was terrified because dad actually showed up at court with, it had to be over 10 men, and she was like, she didn't even want to walk towards the courtroom because he literally had all the men sitting outside the courtroom.
Hmm.
And I literally grabbed her hand, and I, moved her to the other side of where we were walking so that I was closest to the men. And, she, made sure like she was fully covered her hair and her face and whatnot. And I told her, I said, if they're going to do something to you, they have to go through me. And she, like, as I held her hand and as we walked to that courtroom, she was shaking. Like her hands were sweaty and clammy, and she was shaking. And I sat with her the entire court session. rode the train with her, drove her home to make sure she was okay. And in another case, it was a child who was being abused. Her mother wanted her back. She did not want to go back to her mother, but she was like deathly afraid to say anything in court, because her mom was, I was there, and her mom was actually there, like intimidating her. Like I could see it. And the judge would ask her questions, and the girl was, she would not look up at the judge. She wouldn't say anything. And I kind of like motioned, like made a face at the judge, and the judge actually requested for me and the child to go back into his chambers so she can speak to him privately. And he asked her all the questions he had asked her out in the courtroom that she wouldn't answer, and she was able to answer them freely. And then we went back to, you know, the courtroom, and he made his decision. And yeah.
These are things we would never learn from a textbook or in school. You have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And like you said, these are experiences that you grow your skill set in ways you never thought that you would, because you are put in situations where you're on, and like you said, you just do what you have to do to support that client.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Switching gears kind of to round out our conversation, there is a lot of policies. Everywhere is going to be different. Every state's going to have different policies, procedures, different jurisdictions do. What are some barriers you saw at maybe a systematic level that were difficult to manage, or you just had to be mindful of when working in child welfare?
Honestly, Megan, in my opinion, in regards to policies and whatnot, they need to be revamped. Okay, everything that needs to, they need to go back to the drawing board. Okay, because stuff is so outdated, and it's just like we're in different times, different things are going on. Okay, so I look at some of the policies, and I'm just like, what is this? Like this is like reading hieroglyphics to me. This doesn't make sense. Like this does not make sense. Like no, we throw it away. We need to start anew, because it's not, they're not working.
They're not working. And I think so much of what we learn in our macro classes, going back to the no client lives in a bubble, we don't live in a bubble, there's systems, needs assessments. What are the needs of the clients? What are the needs of the population? And like you said, the needs change. So so as social workers, we can advocate for these things, right? We can say, hey, these policies are outdated. And that sometimes might be infiltrating the inside to take those leadership roles, or to speak with those that are in the roles to do that and say, we need to rethink this because it's not working and it's not benefiting those that it's meant to serve.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, they gotta, somebody has to do something, because how things are currently going and how they're set up right now, it's like, it's to the point as a social worker, like I find myself bending rules, going through loopholes to get my clients what they need, because it's like, you have to fit under this certain bubble. You have to fit under this. You have to be this, and that to get the bare basic necessity that no. Like,
it shouldn't be that difficult to get the basics that you need to survive.
But it is like, and I can give you an example. Like I have a client that I'm working with now. She has no income, undocumented, but her child is American born. The struggle, I mean, we reach success now, but the struggle I had to go through to get this woman SNAP benefits for her, you know, say what you want about her, but for her American born child, to get the bare necessities that she needs. And on top of that, her, you know, her baby is very sickly. So she requires special formula that is expensive. Formula is expensive in general, but like this special kind that she needs is like twice the price. And it's like, it, why? Like, first of all, we have medical documentation. You know, the medical documentation is there. Everything that everything is there on paper that like someone at a county assistance office or anywhere would look and say, oh, okay, stamp of approval. But literally, I had to jump through like hoops of fire to get this woman what she needed for her child.
Mm-hmm.
And why is it so difficult? It's a basic need. It's food.
Yep.
Okay, it's food. No child should go hungry. Period. No person should go hungry. But I draw the line when it's a baby.
Mm-hmm. And just think, if we're thinking with our social work hats, putting ourselves in the shoes of that mother,
Mhm.
how many different things intersect there, right? There's probably shame with
Mhm.
that. I can't support the needs of my child. Frustration. Um, I'm sure there is some sort of prejudice that this person is feeling as someone that is not a documented citizen, right? We have to think of how many different systems are at play and what this is like for our clients. And that ties to the early intervention. If we could pour the resources into it now, preventative work, we could not solve all of the problems, but we could prevent a lot of the problems that these families and these kiddos will have down the road. We have to intervene early and often, is what I say with early intervention.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so my last question is, if you could give someone coming out of the field, or maybe someone has been in the field a long time and they're thinking, you know what, I'm drawn to doing child welfare early intervention work. What is the biggest piece of advice you could give? One piece of wisdom that you would pass on.
You have to be open-minded because not every case is the same. Not every family is the same. Not every person is the same. And that's the same thing with child welfare. You have to be open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
You
And
have,
when you say open-minded, like, does that continue to show in your work daily, right? Different
yes,
cases, different ways that you're like, oh, I haven't seen this before. I haven't thought about it this way.
yes, because again, like I said earlier, people, when they think of social workers and child welfare, they're thinking of low income, single parent home, some sort of substance abuse or mental illness, or some socioeconomic problem. And that's not always the
Right.
case. I have had clients who were TV executives
Yeah.
for major networks. And yes, I have had some patients, some clients who have had past substance abuse issues, mental illness, but that doesn't make them any different. They still need my help.
Right. So
So
just throwing those perceptions away of child welfare looks a certain way, it doesn't.
doesn't. Nope. Child welfare could be me, it could be you,
Yeah.
it could be anybody.
Yeah. Um, well, this was super, super, super helpful, and I'd love to hear about your experience. And I think that you can speak for yourself, but your work in child welfare has probably paved the way for what you do now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It has. It's just I became a social worker, like I said, because I wanted to help. I wanted to help children and families. And although, my professional background now is so eclectic, it's so,
Mm.
my hands have been in so many pots, it's it's made me love working with just diverse populations. It just made my love for wanting to help, to advocate, to be a liaison grow even more.
Well, I think that your passion and just the way you speak about it shows how much that this is a passion of yours and how it really is a guiding force for you in all that you do. So, I have some resources up here for those that are looking for some more information about child welfare services, even some on burnout, because burnout's very high amongst child welfare workers. Because if you're listening to this, there's not enough people doing the work. So consider it if you are And then just talking about attachment theory, early intervention, lots of good stuff here. But I wanted to just wrap up by thanking Taisha for being with us and sharing her expertise today. Thank you, Taisha, and I'm excited to hear more about in your future where your future endeavors take you.
Thank you so much for having me, Megan. And I also just wanted to say really quick, if it was not for Agents of Change, I probably would not be licensed right now, because Agents of Change was the only thing, the only program that I've come across that was able to assist me in obtaining my LSW.
So I love to hear these full circle stories. And that's why I got into this work, is because not everyone learns the same. Everyone learns differently. I learn differently, right? I have a brain that's wired different than other people too, and just finding a way that can support learning needs. So I love to hear your story, and that it's really come full circle.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this continuing education course from Agents of Change. Want to earn your CE credits for this course? Visit agentsofchangetraining.com or the link in the description to purchase the course and take the post test. If you're looking for more CEs, check out our unlimited plan. You will get unlimited access to 150 plus ASWB and NBCC approved continuing education courses for one low annual fee. We're always adding new courses. Did I mention we also have 5 free CE credits available too? Check it out at agentsofchangetraining.com.